The Zendure Superbase Pro is a 2000 watt-hour capacity backup battery with enormous charge potential, UPS capabilities, and curiously, Wi-Fi 4G and GPS connectivity. Is this the ultimate Internet of Things enabled battery? Maybe, but it's also just a really good size of portable battery. Join me, James Bruce, as we take a closer look at the Zendure Superbase Pro 2000. From a physical perspective, the Zendure Superbase Pro weighs around 21 kilograms or 46 pounds, so it's not exactly lightweight, but nor is it going to be a problem for most people to deadlift into your car or back of a truck. It measures 17.5 by 10.5 by 13.8 inches wide and features two solid, rugged wheels along with an extendable suitcase-style handle. It's certainly the easiest to carry around in its capacity class that I've ever tried. And actually, the weight and ease of portability is such that it would be fine to take camping somewhere in a little remote place from where you'd parked, for instance. You could load up gear on top of this and it'll happily trundle along with these big wheels. The main body is made of a sort of recycled plastic, which gives it this lovely, sometimes mottled finish. Like any battery, it's not waterproof or anything like that, but it would be happy, coming out of your RV, sat on the grass or some dirt, going along a dirt path. There's no need to be precious with it. On the front, you'll find 4 buttons to operate the device. The main on-off switch, the AC on-off, the DC on-off, though this doesn't affect the USB ports, and you'll also find a network button. More on the networking aspect later, but suffice to say, you have both Wi-Fi, which you can configure in the app for when you're at home, and you even have a built-in 4G. Now, this seems to come with 1 year of connectivity, but it's not clear how much that will cost to continue with after your 1 year period is up. Inside the Superbase Pro, you have a lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide, or NMC battery, rated to around 1500 cycles before it hits about 80% capacity, and 3000 cycles to reach 60% capacity. Now, this isn't as good as lithium iron phosphate, or Li-ion, which is usually closer to 3000 cycles before it hits 80%, but it is still very good. It's also worth mentioning that they have an almost identical model, same size and pretty much the same weight, called the Superbase Pro 1500, which does use lithium iron phosphate instead and is therefore rated to 3000 cycles. But as the name suggests, it has a slightly lower total capacity of 1500 watt hours. So you can either have a longer lasting, lower capacity 1500 model, or shorter lifespan but higher capacity in the 2000 model, both in the same size and weight and same sort of portable package. So that's an interesting choice. Okay, how about solar input? So as well as AC input up to 1800 watts, which lets you charge up to 80% capacity in less than an hour via a standard IEC cable here, it also has 2 different possible inputs for solar. And this is quite interesting, so let's take a closer look at that. First up is the XT60 port. Now, this can handle up to 600 watts or 12 to 60 volts, 10 amps. This means that you can charge it from smaller solar panels, basically. In the past, I've had trouble charging large batteries like this from, say, 100 or 200 watt panels. The activation voltage just isn't high enough on a lot of big batteries in less than ideal conditions, whereas this will allow it. And in the package, you do get a suitable XT60 to MC4 cable. There's no DC 9mm jack though, so you couldn't, for example, use any Jackery Solar Saga panels without some sort of adapter, so do check your cabling before you head out. Now, as well as the XT60 input for faster solar charging up to 1800 watts, you can also use the very same AC input port with this MC4 to IEC cable. Now, this method has a minimum voltage of 60 up to 160 volts, that's for larger installs or panels connected in series, like these here, which add together the output voltages. So, of course, you can use the Zendure with any standard MC4 equipped panel that meets those specifications. These 550 watt bifacials panels that I have behind me here, they're not exactly portable, of course. So if you want portable, then Zendure also produces these 200 watt panels, one of which they kindly sent me to test alongside this. You can in fact connect up to 8 of these together to the AC input here. Now, although this isn't a review of the Zendure 200 watt panels themselves, I did want to cover that briefly because, to be honest, I found them to be a little underpowered and quite awkward to use. It does come in a carry case, which is great, but compared to the sort of all-in-one magnetic clasp type designs, it's just not as convenient. It's a bit unwieldy once you get it out. You have to unclasp the rear stand from each panel, then sort of angle each one individually, then go back and redo it all again because it moved, and sort of keep tweaking it until you get the right angle. But more concerning for me was that despite being rated at 200 watts, on the clearest of clear summer days like today, I mean, all right, British summer, I was only able to get 120, 140 watt maximum out of them. And that was as damn near direct angle to the sun as I could get it. And that's just less than I would expect from even a 180 watt static panel. So to me, they just don't seem to be that efficient. They're not terrible by any means, considering it's a 200 watt panel or 150. They do fold down to a pretty compact size. Actually no larger than the 100 watt sort of panels that I have, although it is a bit heavier. I just can't see myself buying 8 of them to connect up in parallel though. As well as being a bit awkward, I'd rather just at that point buy some high efficiency static panels like these and then attach those to the van or cabin. I think it would be a lot more cost effective. Now, curiously, you can even use both the AC and DC for solar inputs at the same time, meaning that if you have multiple sets of panels or you want to use the AC from the wall as well as the solar, you can get up to 2400 watts maximum charge rate, assuming you maxed both of them out. Also, if you had different rated panels and you don't want to wire them in series or parallel and do some complex math there, you can use the MC4 to AC cable as well as the MC4 to XC60 cable to plug them into the different inputs. So for instance, I have these high power sort of 1000 watt total rated ones here, and then any lower rated portable panels I can plug into the regular XT60 and combine the two. Now that's really convenient and really lets you take advantage of any mixed panels that you might have. I love that. 337 through AC, 50 odd through DC. And you can see they're both charging. On the output side here, whoop, you'll find 6 AC ports, 4 in the European version, though I will say these are quite close together. So if you have a large adapter plug, you won't be able to use all 6. Zendure has, however, helpfully aligned them slightly differently on the side and in the middle though, so you might still be able to fit in 6 if you play a little bit of Tetris first. Then you also have a standard 12-13 volt car port here. Around the front, you'll find 4 USB-C ports, 2 of which are rated 100 watts power delivery, so 5 to 20 volt ports, and 2 of which are a more standard 20 watts fast charge. I will, however, point out the distinct lack of USB-A ports, which to me feels like a very curious omission. Now, I know that USB-C is slowly becoming the standard. Even Apple has been forced to implement it on their devices next year by EU rules. But even then, often USB-C charging cables terminate in a full-size USB-A port on the other end, so it's much less common to find straight USB-C to USB-C cables. That said, Zendure does include a little adapter in with the package, but even so, it's an odd design choice. I mean, why not just add 2 standard 5 volt 2 amp USB-A ports? The manufacturing costs are pretty cheap anyway. If anything, they're cheaper than C ports, so I think it's just a bizarre choice, and you'll probably need to pick up some USB-C to USB-C cables to go with this. Just put them in the carry case and keep them with you so you're not caught out. Of course, after the first time using this tiny USB-C adapter, I lost it. Then once I'd found it again, I managed to break it because it's quite delicate with a massive USB cable on one end and a tiny USB-C port on these other. These adapters generally are quite prone to breaking though, I will say. So I also encountered some bugs with the power output display, namely while anything was plugged into the 100 watt PD ports, it didn't actually report any power output. Now in fairness, they did offer to send a special firmware update tool to me in order to fix that, but this is an early prototype, so I can forgive that sort of thing. I'm sure it will be fixed in the final model. And the devices do charge, they just don't report that they're charging. Also, the DC button doesn't control the USB outputs, which is apparently intentional. So I mean, okay, but in the app, The USB is reported as a DC output because it is DC. So it feels like a bit of a disconnect there. Perhaps they were trying to make it more user-friendly, and I'm just used to it being done the other way. I do know it can be pretty frustrating though if you've quickly plugged in your phone expecting it to charge because the battery is clearly on, and then you come back an hour later to find, oh, actually it's not charged at all because I didn't turn on the DC ports. So it's probably a good thing. It's just different to what I'm used to. So the continuous output rating of this thing is 2000 watts, which is not the highest I've seen on this kind of premium battery. It's still pretty good though, and will cover most appliances. They can, however, surge to 4000 watts, but not sustain at that level. In fact, I found it was very quick to shut off when going past 2000 watts, even for a few seconds. So while you can deal with spikes, it does have a very low tolerance for sustained overpower. And I will say this is in contrast to some other large batteries I've tried, which, if anything, understate their output capabilities and will happily go technically overpower for a fair few seconds before needing to reset. So I tested this out with a kettle and an electric hob. And basically, in order to use the kettle, which is about 2.4 kilowatts, I had to turn on the amp up feature in the app, which enables up to 3 kilowatts output. And that's just for one high power device though, not a generic overpower plug in as much as you like mode, just for one device. Therefore, I wasn't able to use both the kettle and the hob at the same time. So I think if you're using this for AC devices, you will need to think a little more carefully about what you plug into it, especially if you're working with high power things with a motor or a heating element in them. Still, it can go into a high power mode for just one device if you need it to, just not lots of devices at the same time. Now, it also features a UPS. Unlike some batteries that have some sort of power pass through to act like a UPS or uninterruptible power supply, while not actually being an uninterruptible power supply, the Superbase Pro does. It can be an actual proper UPS, and it will happily run data-sensitive applications. So this means you can plug it into the wall, enable UPS mode, and then the power will pass through to the AC sockets until the point at which your power goes off, and then this will take over, and it will be seamless. Your computer won't shut down, things won't turn off briefly, it will keep them on. So I tried this with my gaming PC, and it worked just fine. It also has GPS and 4G because, yeah, why not? Now, admittedly, I had no idea why it would actually feature a GPS chip, but actually it's a built-in tracker, right? So at any point you can open up the app, see the status of the device, even if you don't have Wi-Fi, because it can connect over 4G, and you can see exactly where it is on a map. In theory, at least, I couldn't get that working, possibly a hardware bug on mine. Again, bit of a prototype model. However, the 4G connectivity did seem to work fine. So even when I didn't have Wi-Fi, I could connect through the app and check out what it was doing and enable features, etc. So I don't know how likely it is that someone's going to try and steal a battery of this size. I mean, they might. It's worth a lot of money, but if they do manage to sneakily walk off with a 20-kilogram suitcase, then it does have that built-in tracker, and you should be able to find it again as long as you remembered to enable the 4G connectivity beforehand. Or I guess if you leave it in the car, you could use it to find your car or tent at a music festival. Like I said, though, I couldn't get that to work for me, or rather the app pointed to the current location of my phone, not the battery. As for other IoT and app features, part of the app contains something called the Zen Forest. And this is Zendure's way of promoting green energy usage, as well as little floating bubbles of CO2 when you charge through solar or use the battery, which you click on and collect and add to your score. You also have a set of achievements for things like turning on the LED lighting or setting a timed shutdown. Thankfully, you can completely ignore this aspect of the device if you want. It's not as in your face as some apps, but you don't need to engage with it on any level, really. Now, I mentioned LED lighting, and rather than, say, a camping light on the side, it has a very subdued RGB underlight. I guess this is so that you don't lose it in the dark when you're camping. It doesn't seem to be bright enough to be useful in any other aspect, though, so like I say, it won't light up your tent or act as an SOS signal, but it can at least claim to be the first battery with RGB lighting. So, yeah. Anyway, is this the portable battery pack for you? Despite some usability issues with certain features requiring use of the app, and the fact that it only has USB-C ports, I do think this is a Goldilocks capacity for camping trips, RVs, off-grid, small cabin use. For the most part, and where it matters, the app works. In terms of pricing, the 2000 watt-hour model comes in at $2,100 currently, while the 1500 watt-hour model is $1,800. So this model works out at almost exactly $1 per watt hour. Now that isn't the cheapest on the market, it does sit alongside other premium brands, but I think in terms of portability, it's worth it for the convenient format, along with the IoT features which I could forget about, but they might factor into your decision. Certainly the true UPS ability could be a worthwhile addition for you. So the Superbase Pro isn't going to scale up to a higher capacity. It's not a hybrid home and portable unit that you can link into the house, but it is a very neat and portable package with enormous charging potential, enabling you to use a mix of solar panels, both large and small, up to 2,400 watts when combined. So you can really take advantage of the sun when you have it, which is rare around here. It's about as rugged as a portable battery can get, and the size and weight is perfect for loading gear on top of and then trundling along to your campsite. The 2000 watt-hour capacity with 2000 watts continuous output is more than likely enough. It can run a space heater or kettle for at least an hour or two, depending on how much power you're drawing. It's not perfect then, but if you need a high power output and capacity in a very portable package with advanced app features, UPS capabilities, and the ability to charge from a mixed set of solar panels, this is definitely a good option with a competitive price. All right, that's it from me. I hope I told you what you need to know about the Zendure Superbase Pro. If I did, then please hit like and consider subscribing. If I didn't, then head on down to the comments and tell me why. Until next time, be prepared for anything.